Thanks, everybody. As introduced, Rox Flame on most things. Pretty easy handle for me to grab. My background, I've been here since Drupal 5. Typically, this is the part where I'd talk about running a successful Drupal business and get your buy-in, and that I know enough about Drupal-y things that you'll trust you'll hear something new or maybe something at least relatable. However, I have a confession. I'm actually a double agent, an interactivity artist masquerading as a business person. When I'm not Drupaling, I'm making games and interactive art. So as a 15 years Drupal insider-outsider, I have hot takes and a deck of lenses. Now this is something the games industry folk have been keeping as their own little secret, sneaky scamps. Very good book and deck, this. You can look at all sorts of projects through all sorts of different lenses, get a whole lot of really interesting information. Most of it's game dev related, but there's some crossovers. So, welcome to my talk, Drupal as an API for fun things. Now, to an outsider, this is actually a Venn diagram. Notice the circles don't overlap. Now, as a double agent, I see it more like this. You might too. But what goes here in the middle? What's connecting these? Well, we'll get there, but first we need to bridge the gap with APIs. So this is more like Drupal is an API for fun things. But what really is an API? Well, it's how apps, sites, and services flirt with each other. So, you know, you've got a random app jangling keys suggestively, and Drupal responds with cookies. Banana Joker can get it, if you know what I mean. One thing leads to another, and our pal Drupal is being barraged with post. Dear DrupalCon, please change. Also, send me that report immediately. Yours, Banana Joker. P.S. Please send more cookies. These ones are about to expire. So, what is this secret sauce that makes Drupal special to a game or app developer? Now, these are some of the lenses you might look at it through: the lens of elegance, lens of simplicity versus complexity, or the nameless quality. We're trying to distill what is the Drupalness, that why would you use Drupal with these other projects? Now, hint, it's none of the new stuff we're doing. It's not the AI, it's not Canvas, it's not recipes or any of the other things that we've been doing for the last little while. Or even most of the old stuff. We're talking headless, so take out the template layer. You need user permissions. This is a big part of this particular recipe. Blocks and menus, yeah, not really using the UI much at all, apart from some admin stuff. Even modules, like most of what you need now these days for a good Drupal as an API experience is in core, which is awesome. So you've got JSON API in core, you've got views in core, you've got things we used to have to install way back, like CCK. You know, you can build out your entities and everything, query them. You can do this all in core now. So you've really got user permissions and data connected. It's ACID. Access controlled interconnected data. Nice and simple. So everything else is kind of abstractions on top of that, and it's like how we interact with and use to like sell Drupal or make it easier for our users or for a full Drupal experience. But when you're talking Drupal connected to something else, not really necessary a lot of the other stuff. Okay, so this is like a day in the life of a game developer or an app developer that's trying to build something fun. Oh cool, this feature's so fun to make. I love being a game developer. Character designs, yeah. Too hard basket, maybe we'll make it later. User authentication. Oh yeah, level ideas, that's great. Yeah. Oh, live content updates, so that seems kind of tricky to do that, but do that a bit later. Lots of cool items to collect, yeah, and make a whole lot of those, lots of art, all of that. Querying complex object to player ownership mappings, oh yeah, I'll do that later. Oh, getting too hard again. Procedurally generated monsters, that's so fun to code, yeah, awesome. Asset management system to manage all of this. Players can talk to each other, that's cool, fun and games. Oh, we need things like flood protection. Oh, I've got a friend helping me make the game now. And we need user permission systems. And we want more content. And now we need an admin UI for managing all this content. So making games and apps is hard, and the most mind-numbing parts of the process are the parts Drupal just do really well, just by default. Like you can go, I'm making a game, there's all this complex stuff, and then it's like all the things that I keep running into with other game developers in the scene, all the things that a lot of their talks are about trying to solve complex stuff for, a lot of it's just, to us, day-to-day stuff. It's just what Drupal does under the hood by default. So I'm going to go into a few projects that we've worked on and how we've used Drupal as an API for these things. Some of them are proof of concepts that have moved on to other things. Some of them are using Drupal through and through. Now this here is an app that we worked on, a React Native app with Firebase to serve content, but it was all admin managed from Drupal at the back end. Now basically the way that this one works is you have a bunch of card entities with relationship entities, and all of these cards carry a whole lot of metadata. So they've got icons, they have the colors, basically everything you're seeing rendered in the app. So you've got the names of the things, the images, the borders, the whole lot, that's all managed within Drupal. And then you can import this with feeds with CSVs as well. And then we just push that to production, and all of this just can be queried over API really easily. Now this one, we just use standard JSON API out of core for all the API stuff. We didn't have to write an API. It just comes out of the box, which is awesome. And it just gives the client an admin interface immediately. They can see how everything interacts and connects. And yeah, they don't have to ask for any new code to be made to release a deck. They can just create another deck of cards, connect things up correctly, and they can add an expiry date and a price, and that all feeds through. So the next one is Pave Digital. This is something we're still working on, but we have a proof of concept which has Drupal basically just doing user management. And by user management, I just mean users being able to log in, and then we get a Drupal user account, and it gets them into the app. And this is really good for us because it means we can collect Drupal users that we can manage across our other rest of our platform and take the user through a full journey. The basics here, we're using Drupal session authentication. You have a request that's done from the app over HTTPS. And this is local on their computer, so they've opened the game. The request is done over HTTPS with their username and password or keys. You can do it with keys or username and password. We never keep the password, that's just sent one time. Drupal responds with a session cookie, a CSRF token, and a logout token. So these all become quite useful for managing the session. Now basically, what you do with this is any further requests you do, you don't have to send a password. So you're basically just sending the session cookie and the CSRF, and Drupal says, cool, this person's already logged in, I have an active session for them, and you can do whatever that user has permission to do from there. So you could make post requests, you could do get requests, whatever that user could do. If they could create things, if they could just retrieve things, you can use that. So in this case, we were just using it to say, okay, you're a real person who's authenticated, you have an account. So therefore we can kind of know who you are and give you a player name. And then from there you could, in theory, in future, also then start tracking player statistics and all sorts of stuff against them. You also get a logout token. This is really useful, so you can drop the session whenever you like. Drupal can also be set up to drop sessions in whatever kind of timing you want. Typically the sessions last quite a long time, but you can make them shorter or even longer. You can make them not expire if you want, or manually expire them. But yeah, the idea behind this is, this is just a nice default feature of Drupal. You don't need to install anything for this. This is just there. So you can create an app and communicate with it and connect, which is, just really cool. Okay, so there's Eventer. Now I'm actually not going to talk about this one much today because I have another session tomorrow where I'm going to dive a bit deeper into this. But we have a fully Drupal-based events and ticketing platform which is connected to a whole bunch of APIs. So we've got the seats.io API doing seating plans. We've got NEC ID for facial recognition for biometric check-in. But then we've got Drupal as an API doing a bunch of things. So we have an app that event managers can use, and they use that to manage their guest lists and to manage check-ins. So that app over API allows the event manager to log in using the same authentication that I spoke to just before. So they get a session and they can go in, and then from there they can see the list of their current events, which is simply a Drupal view. So the one module we've added here in this stack is just REST views, a really simple one. So you can just say, cool, this user sees this view, and this is what they would get back if they were authenticated. It returns their specific listing. Gets their events, they can go into their event, and then they can see their full guest list, and they can check the guest in via multiple methods. So that could be QR code if the person's bought in a ticket, or facial recognition. So the app then does another call to the NEC facial recognition API and compares that to their Drupal user profile photo that they've uploaded against their user account. And then once we've got either the QR code or the facial recognition or just a manual check-in via the app done, it'll send a state change back for that ticket and update the list. And yeah, all this, for the most part, is just Drupal core again. We've got Drupal core JSON API and REST views, and then we've got our, some custom stuff for connecting to the other APIs. But the parts Drupal are doing are really basic. It's just able to communicate very simply. REST views isn't a Drupal core thing, but we did actually end up doing a lot of that with just JSON API as well, which is in core again. Really simple stuff. Okay, so we have Monomoly. This is actually my favorite project that we've used Drupal for. Actually, before I do that, I just want to quickly show you this Pave login in action and how it looks to a user. So you can see that. Just like really simple. Just load this up. Is that going to work? Okay, yeah, so I've managed to get it to go with another screen. So chuck in a username. So that's pretty simple. That was Drupal authenticating with the game. Nice and basic. And I'm in. But I'll just close that. The session will stay active there, and I can open it back up and I'll still be in the game. And I can return. So just move on from there. Back to this. Okay, so we've got Monomoly. I'm not sure how many of you know what an MMOCCG is, but it's a massive multiplayer online collectible card game. In this instance, we're using Drupal as a data wrangler, a user authenticator, and an asset manager. It's doing a whole bunch of heavy lifting. We're using key authentication. There's two types of communication happening. One is on the user level to collect user ownership information. So if you're authenticated as a specific person, you can get back your cards and your decks and things like that. But then you've got from the app end or the game end, where it's just querying as a specialized user role, where it can get information about the available cards in the universe in this game. And we have a little bit of extra special sauce in this one, but still no custom modules. We're just still doing this with stuff you can just get really easily. So the most complex thing in there is using ECA, which is generating us some fancy prompts, although we're not doing that anymore. To be honest, we've dropped that, and I'm now doing all of the art myself because we decided we don't like to use AI art. But we did have a really fun prompt builder in there, which takes information from each of the parts of the cards and then generates an image from that. Now, the thing that makes this particular project kind of special and why Drupal is a really good candidate for it is that the model of how the cards are built is really complex. So each card is made of 5 distinct components, 5 genes, and these genes can be mixed and matched by the players, and that gives you a resulting card. And then those cards you can collect into decks, and basically the complex way in which these genes interact to build out the full card is something that not having a UI for would just be really difficult to manage. So this here was my initial basic entity relationship diagram I put together for building it out and building out some of the basics in Drupal. So you've got, where's my mouse? Over here. You've got the user. The user has the user details. They have a list of decks, and then they have a collection of cards. The decks are basically lists of cards as well from this other list. Each deck has names, a name, user addable notes, the owner, and then the 40 card references. So it's all just entity references really at the end of the day. We have caching on top of the decks and then a deck JSON output. Whoops. A deck JSON output, and there's a deck builder UI. We're actually handling this in app now, just because it's a bit easier than jumping between systems. We have the card entities themselves. So each card has a card reference. So the card reference is another entity. But a card is owned by somebody. It has an owner reference on it. It has a reference card connected to it, and it's got some history logged against it, and then a bunch of genes. So these genes are the kind of magic sauce that make the system really special. Each of those genes provides a whole bunch of information, and then that information is smashed together to make the card. Now we have in the site, what Drupal's doing on the back end there is you load in all of the gene types, and then we can create a card out of a combination of the genes. And these are literally just taxonomy terms. So you go card, add one of each of the term types, and you've got your set of genes. And then we're running some computed fields that add up all the numbers across the cards and gives you a resulting card. And yeah, it also gives you some extra stuff, some keywords, some sigils and other attributes, things that the game needs. But the main juice of all of this is that from the admin end, you're just going in and you can load in all of your genes and all your special stuff, and then you can distribute this to a game really easily, and we can make live updates to this and query it whenever we need to get updated card lists or genes that are available. We can cache our different endpoints. And yeah, for a while there we were creating images with, an OpenAI image query, but we've gone for a layered approach now where we just have sort of an image per gene layer and we stack them on top of each other, and it's come out a lot more fun, I think, anyway. But yeah, those are the sort of my 4 main fun projects that I've done in this context, using Drupal as an API. I would love to open it for questions. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
No, there's no mic here. Just be a bit louder.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, I have 2 questions. First question: you said the different tables, like entities, are related by the entity reference. I think I could be wrong, but I think the entity reference in Drupal, you need to create the entity, and then if you're creating 2 entities, you can't do it in one workflow. You have to create the other one and then come back to the original and then get across. Is that? I guess I'm asking what's the user experience like if you were using Drupal admin to manage the game? I think I can't remember the second question was, but you can answer that while I'm thinking of the other ones.
Yeah, so in the use case of creating a reference between 2 things and then wanting a reference from the other side, I usually just install the corresponding entity references module and have it sync so that the admin user doesn't have to worry about that. They go and reference it in one way, and then it automatically references the other way for them with a corresponding reference field that updates. Just takes out that step for the admin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's like reverse reference. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was thinking like you might need like entity browser or something like that.
Yeah, in some cases we do have. So for the content entry for some of these things, sometimes you might use like an inline entity field modal data entry option. There's a whole lot of ways you can sort of handle entering the data. In a lot of cases, we're just chucking a feed in and importing spreadsheets as well for initial stuff. But once you've got live editing of the data, then yeah, having like inline entity forms, I should say. Inline entity forms, it's a great module. It allows you to basically use a different display mode a different form display mode for an entity as the way you enter that reference on its parent, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. That's great. Next question. Sorry, I remember now. You mentioned out of the box stuff, but you mentioned the computed field. Is that a module, or is that something that's already included in the core?
Yeah, that one's not in core. So that particular project did pull in a couple of other modules, I will admit. But a lot of the basic stuff, like and most sort of API endpoints you would need, you can just do with straight core. Yeah, but that one uses. There's a computed field module that you can use for that, and it comes with like some types of computation it can do, and you can include tokens and other bits and pieces. So you can say, this field times this field does this, gives you this value, and then it caches that on the entity. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, no, that's really cool, and it's cool seeing you do other stuff with Drupal. So all those things like user authentication, content management, all great stuff, but do you find you ever have to fight against Drupal to do anything that you want to? Is there anything you're going against the grain and you have to kind of re-engineer certain things on the Drupal side?
I think the stuff that in the context of apps and games, if you're like needing to go too far against the grain, that often ends up on the app end, and just kind of use Drupal for what it's best at. Every now and again, you might need something special for Drupal to be doing there, but typically it's storing and giving back the data with some permissions on it, and it's kind of the real secret, like essence of it there, and having a good relational data model, all that stuff's just really good default Drupal stuff. Anything beyond that almost always ends up being a feature of the app itself rather than Drupal. Yeah.
When something happens in the game, you have to sync it back to Drupal. You have to custom code that, or can you just do it through these APIs?
You can just do it with these APIs. So the JSON API module in core, you can turn on different types of request mode that it can do and assign them to different entity types, controlled by the permissions model as well, so the permissions table. So you could say, users of this type can post this type of content or update specifically content they own, and that's all controlled by the permissions table. So you've got like update, get, and post requests are all available straight out of the box. Yeah.
If you use this in production with people presumably playing games on an app or however, is caching really important with all these inline?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why we've used the views REST module as part of this stack in a lot of cases as well, so that you can basically set up whatever level of caching and other caching systems you want in there. It's not typically too much of a problem. There's some cases where you might have really high demand sites, and then we can do something like sync that to Firebase. So sometimes we've used Drupal as the source of truth, but then we've got Firebase actually doing all of the distributing to players, and then it just goes back and gets an updated version of what it needs on whatever schedule you want. So you could do that as well. So you could use Firebase as a caching layer essentially. It's kind of just caching at that point. Or you can, depending on your setup and how many users you're expecting, you can also just get really far with something like Redis, and just making sure as many of your requests are returning cached responses as possible.